Because it's so damn hot. Getting hot on the backside, hot on the front side. I used to excuse the colloquialism. I'm sweating like a whore in church. Hey, good morning. It's been a while since I've done a Friday Extra video, and I figured today might be a good day to answer some questions that keep coming up over and over and over again, and I don't have a lot going on, so I figured Friday Extra it is. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, strap in, and let's get at it. You know, first of all, when we're on the boat, or as we affectionately like to refer to it as sea talks, I drink my coffee black. But I'm not on the boat today, and nothing goes in coffee quite like rum chata. If you haven't tried it, oh. Anyway, so yeah, let's, oh wait, before I get into answering all the questions that people have, I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple other things. One is, in looking at YouTube's analytics, people in the area that I don't have to use an airplane to get to, it seems like the most concentration of viewers that we have in the immediate area of the Northeast is in New York and New Jersey. And before the summer's over, I was really hoping, I mean, it's tough with this COVID thing, but it was getting better and then it's getting worse, so I don't know how we'll do it. But barring that, you know, or assuming that things will get better, which hopefully they will, I want to ask you people in New York and New Jersey if any of you have any interest in doing a meetup in the, I'm thinking the Perth Amboy area would probably be best, just because it's close to everybody. There's a bunch of people on Staten Island, people from New York, and people from the shore down in Jersey, all that sort of stuff. So if that's something that you're interested in, please send me, you can comment, but it would really help if you sent me an email at TimBatSea at gmail.com. That way I can get a number together. I've never done a meetup before, and I'm terrified that I go there and one person will show up. So that's one of the things that I want to do. Another thing is, my son has offered to help, and I don't know if it's something that you guys want to do or not, but we were thinking about doing a live stream and sitting down and taking, you know, having you guys check in and all that sort of stuff. Once again, that probably won't be as fun if nobody shows up and nobody's in the, you know, part of the live stream, and nobody's typing their questions in, that sort of stuff. So here's my question. The original one was, if you're in the New York and New Jersey area, would you be interested in a meetup in the Perth Amboy area? And what days are better for you than others? And then the same kind of question for a live stream. What day and what time of day or night would be best for you guys to participate in it? You know, this isn't something that I just want to sit there for an hour and talk to my son about, which I always like talking to my son, but I'm really here to talk to you guys. Anyway, those are the two questions. So if you guys could get back to me, that would be great. Like I say, I really want this channel to be more of a community where you guys are involved in this just as I am as well. All right, so coffee break. Let's get into questions. So one that we don't see quite as often as we did before, when I was when I did the where I got this question the most, and I got it 1,000,000 times, was from the video that we are going through the Cape Cod Canal. So 1,000,000 people asked me, of course it's not 1,000,000 people, relax, all right? Just a lot of people asked why I didn't push the whole way. And when I went through the canal, why didn't I stay in push gear? Because if you remember, we got off the wire around the BB buoy, and then we got into push gear, we pushed through the canal, we got to the other end and the east end, and we got back on the wire, and away we went. And there's a couple, there's a reason for that. You guys saw one of the only days of the year that Buzzards Bay was like a mill pond. And that's why it was such a great opportunity to shoot that film, and I'm so happy that I got that done. God, it's really hot out. If you see me sweating here, it's really hot. Anyway, so Buzzards Bay was beautiful, but what you're not seeing is that in Rhode Island Sound, where the water comes out of Narragansett Bay, Long Island Sound, Buzzards Bay, and the Atlantic Ocean, where all those meet, it always gets really lumpy. And in that day, it was very lumpy that day as well. Now, granted, you're up at the BB buoy, we're an hour up into Buzzards Bay, so that's why it was so flat calm and all that swell had gone down. Now, so in other words, we knew when we left New York that we were going to have to tow, because going by Rhode Island Sound there, we knew it was going to be lumpy. So while the weather's good, while everyone's up off, you know, they're not sleeping or anything like that, and it's daylight, these are things that the more things we can do to mitigate any possibility of something going wrong, the better. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get on or off the wire in bad weather or at nighttime. I'm just saying that if you know you're going to get on the wire eventually, why not get on the wire when it's daytime in beautiful calm weather and nothing gets torn up and the people don't, you know, your crew doesn't get put in danger, and so we put it on the wire and we go and everything's great. Excuse me. So then when we got up to the canal dictates that you can't tow a loaded barge through the canal. So we have to go into push gear, and believe me, they don't have to mandate that. I wouldn't do that anyway. So you know, a light barge is a different story, but a loaded barge, no way. So we got into push gear, we pushed through the canal, and then people said, well, why didn't we just stay in push gear and push all the way to Boston? And actually, that's a pretty good question, because very often, I shouldn't say very often, more often than not, coming out of the east end of the canal is really lumpy. It can get really nasty there. When it's not nasty, if you get a good run, you can run all the way to Boston in push gear. The problem is when you get to the entrance of Boston, sometimes things, you know, it's going to be another watch by then, so another 6 or 8 hours later by the time you get up there. And we had looked at the weather, and if you remember in that video, we had a pilot with us, and the pilot is one of my best friends, and he agreed with me that there was a good chance that, one, we'd be getting there very early in the morning or late at night or whatever. It'd be dark, and the weather was looking like things were going to switch around. There was going to be a heave on as we were going in. And as you shorten up, the problem is when the depth of the water starts to reduce, so it starts shoaling up underneath you, you have to start heaving in on the wire. When you heave in on the wire, if there's any swell, you have to continue to slow down and slow down and slow down, because the wire isn't acting as a shock absorber by increasing the catenary, having it go up and down. So we had looked at the weather that day and realized there was a good chance that we're probably going to need to get out of push gear and onto the wire at some point before we got to Boston. So once again, it was nice. It was, what, 6 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that, 6 o'clock in the evening. So we went and it was beautiful weather at the east end of the canal, and we transitioned to the wire. We towed up, shortened up, slowed down. Everybody was fine. Then we just flopped on the barge. When we went into Quincy, it was daylight operations only, so we were able to flop on the barge heads and tails, go to our anchorage spot, anchor the barge, and then in the morning, when everyone was up and the sun was up, then we got up and we broke the wire, what we call, breaking the wire, meaning getting off the tow wire and getting around and back and getting in push gear, and then when the assist tug showed up, then we went into Quincy. So that's number one. All right, so seems like having my coffee and my phone starts to ring. Now we're gonna break. Okay, so listen, we're a few minutes in, and I got to get through these things quickly. So a lot of people look and they notice a whole series of lights on the barges. This kind of looks like a Christmas tree, all lit up. Where the lights are not on, but they see all these lights, and everyone asks, "What are those lights?" So the barges, most of the barges that we use, you know, different companies, different places, are different places, you know, different equipment. But most of our equipment have about 10 tanks. So you see a big barge, and it's not just one solid tank. It's split into 5 on one side and 5 on the other, you know, inside the barge. When you go to fill those, or you're transferring product, or God forbid if you're discharging and something goes wrong, maybe somebody makes a human error or something breaks or whatever, and one of those tanks starts filling up, it'd be nice to know about that before fuel starts going in the water, because as I've mentioned in the past, if we get oil in the water, it's a really bad day, not only for the environment but for the company and the operator and everybody else. So we do everything that we can to not do that. So when you look at that tower, it'll be a five rows of lights, and there'll be, I think I'm not looking at it now, but I think it's all red in the middle, and then it goes to yellow and then to white on the sides. Maybe I might have that backwards. I don't know what it is, but anyway, so each one of those, each one of the tanks on each side of the boat has its own thing, and the colors will determine where the level of the tank is. So when it's normal operation, one light's lit the whole way up, and it will say that everything's fine. If a light starts to move out to the sides and doing whatever, you know, that means something's wrong, and an auditory alarm will sound. And so if somebody goes out and they can look, they don't have to go and open up 10 hatches to look to see what the problem is. Long before they reach the top of the tank, they can look at those that light tower, and it will show them which tank is approaching full, and then it gets even more full, and then it's like within like 10% or something like that. I don't know what the numbers are. Anyway, that's that. Okay, the next thing is, on the last video I just did, one of the split screen videos, I got a bunch of comments of people saying, why do I have the port engine ahead while I'm running in, I think I was going to New Haven. They say, why do I have that one hooked up and the starboard engine pulled way back? Actually, that's not exactly what's happening. And I'm pretty sure that I even said this in the video, but maybe people are fast forwarding and they're not hearing the audio, or maybe they didn't get it, but whatever. So we have these throttles that are digital throttles, and as a lot of you guys, maybe some people have seen in the comments, there's a whole bunch of people from the aviation sector here, and they talk about how if you have a plane with engines that are not synced up, they can be, you know, within a few percentage of each other, that it flies straight, but there's a harmonic that goes between the two that will drive everyone on the plane crazy. Well, the same thing happens on the tugboat. So if I'm hooked up and maybe I'm going, like, I set the throttles at say 1525, so 1,525 RPM. It's very hard to get them both to line up perfectly. You usually get them about 10-15 RPM off away from each other, and then, you know, it'll go back and forth. And when it's bad, the same harmonic happens throughout the boat. Anyway, so these new digital throttles have something called sync, and it's not like sync like you go to the bottom, but like in sync. So you sync up the throttles, and the computer matches the two engines together. So basically both engines are being run off of the port throttle. Now there's an inherent risk to that, and that's that if something happens, if a boat comes near me and I need to start backing down the engines, or if I need to make a maneuver, or maybe I just hand over the watch to my mate, the thing that switches over from regular mode to sync mode is just a little knob on top of the throttles. And if you don't see that, you might pull both the throttles back and the engines will come back, but you don't realize that starboard engine's having no effect, starboard throttle's having no effect on the engine, because everything's being controlled on the port engine. So out of an abundance of caution, whenever I use the sync, I'll have the engines, you know, both up like this. I'll put it on sync, and then the throttle that's not being used, I'll pull back So it's a visual thing to remind me, hey, when I go to grab the throttles again, remember that they're like this. And they're not, instead of being like this, they're like this. And that will tell me, hey, I need to put these back. I need to take them off of sync mode. So that's what that is. All right, so then another split screen video a while ago. I was going from our lay berth over to a ship, and it was about a quarter of a mile, maybe half a mile away, and I had to do two 180 turns. And got a ton of questions saying, why didn't I just back up? Well, here's the thing. It's kind of hard to realize this until you kind of get your ass handed to you. My mate will attest to that. He says, oh, I tried that once and I'll never do it again. Anyway, a loaded barge, I'm not saying backing up a barge length or something like that. Yeah, anyone can do that. But backing up a quarter of a mile or a third or a half a mile with a loaded barge is really, really difficult. I'm not saying it can't be done. It just is really stressful. And what happens is you start backing up. See, I'm going to try to do it your way. So you're backing up like this. Everything's going great. And then the bow starts to fall off. And it will go to one side or the other. And when it does that, since the barge is loaded, you might have 18 or 20 feet of barge in the water, and if that starts getting sideways, that's going to drive you this way. Or if it goes this way, it'll drive you that way. So as the bow starts to fall off, you can start twin screwing to stop that. And it's if you have any way on the barge, like 2 or 3 knots astern, you're not going to stop that thing. That thing just goes, it has a mind of its own. So as odd as it seemed coming out of that situation, it was easier for me to do a 180 turn, go up to the ship, turn another 180 degrees, and dock the barge. So backing up a loaded barge for any sort of distance, it's not bad when you have very little way on. It's when you start having way, then all of a sudden the bow will take off, and very hard to stop. So that's why we don't back up a barge. All right, here's a question I get from a lot of the European viewers. And some Americans too, but the Europeans do things differently than we do, and so they always have this question, and it's a very valid question. They say, why do you need tugs? Why don't the barges just have self-propelled barges? Apparently, Europe does that. Many of their barges are self-propelled. In other words, they have propulsion engines on the barges, and they go and do their thing. Now, there's probably a million different reasons why. I think that everywhere, whether it's Europe or the United States or Asia or wherever you are, people usually find the best way to do things for where they are right then. And that doesn't make it universally great. So in other words, what works for me might not work for you in another part of the world or even country for that matter. But here's the thing. The way our work works here in the U.S., or at least in New York anyway, we have a bunch of refineries, oil docks, terminals, tank farms, and a whole bunch of shipping that comes all the time. If you were on a barge, the vast majority of your time is not in transit. It's either loading the barge or discharging the barge at the ship or at another terminal. So because of that, when you think about the expenses that are incurred, most of them have to do with crewing. And it's not just what we make in our salary, but it's our health insurance and our, all the other associated cost of having employees. So you also have to, people get paid by the credentials they have. So if a barge had a way of propelling itself, they would need a full crew. And that's not because the barge says they need it, it's because that's what the Coast Guard mandates. So they would need a licensed operator, and that would have to be 2 of them because the barges run 24 hours a day and we're only allowed to work 12 hours a day. So you'd need 2 wheelhouse licenses. You'd probably need an engineer, maybe licensed, maybe not, I'm not sure, it's not my department. But then you need deckhands to run it. So right now, the barges have a crew of 2. You would definitely need at least 5 people on each one of those barges. And that would, bear in mind, that added expense, and of course, obviously the machinery to move stuff like that would be a big deal as well too. So that would be an added expense as well. But all of that would be just to move the barge from the terminal to the ship, which in our case, very rarely does it take over an hour out of the 12, 18-hour discharge. So they might have 12 or 18 hours to load it. I move them for a half hour or an hour, and then they have 12 or 18 hours to discharge it. So of all that time, there's just a little teeny part of time that you would have to justify having all those extra expenses. And so that's why we don't do it. Now, there are other places where, like I say, I don't know the situation in Europe. I don't know this, but I suspect that from reading the comments, that many people in Europe it's not uncommon to have a bunch of licensed people that would be working the barges anyway. So, in other words, if our two tankermen had licenses to run the boat, it might not be a bigger thing having them do it, but then there's the whole issue of an engineer and deckhands and all that, so whatever. So that's why we have tugboats. In other words, I can move barge A from the terminal to the ship. While that's discharging, I can go grab barge B, do the same thing, barge C, D, E, F. There are times where, and it happens so often that it's very common that I will drop off one barge and never see it. Another tugboat will go to pick it up, only because we're all moving all the time. Well, at least we try to when we're busy. So because of that we're on the move all the time, we can save a bunch of money not only in crewing but also in machinery, spaces, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, let's keep moving. Here's another one. People keep asking about bow thrusters on the barges. So, in my career, I've only been on I've only been made up to one barge that had a bow thruster, and I think I did a video of that. And I think I was down in Norfolk. So, anyway, once again, as I was saying before, what makes sense in one part of the country might not make sense in another part of the country. Where we are, like especially New York, when we need an assist tug, an assist tug might have 3,000 to 4,500, 5,000 horsepower to push against us. I think the barge that I was working with had like a 600 horsepower bow thruster. So, in the event that in my world, in the harbor of the port of New York and New Jersey, when we need an assist tug, we're going to need more than 600 horsepower. That's number one. Number two, because if we were in a sleepier town, say if we were down in some creek down south, we might be the only tug and barge there. And so if we're the only tug and barge there, we're not going to be that busy, and no one's going to be around to help us. It makes sense to have a bow thruster there. In New York, we have so many different barges. First of all, a company might have to install at probably about $1 million a piece, meaning for the haul out and maybe I don't even know, probably even a lot more than $1 million a piece. But they'd have to do this on 40 or 50 barges, and so that's a substantial investment. When all they have to do is get in one of our other boats that's passing by and come and lean against us and do the same thing, probably even more effectively. So that's why we don't have bow thrusters where we're at. Not saying they're bad. I would love it if we did, but if we did, they'd have to be big enough to do what we want because the tide. And remember, if you're in a sleepy creek, you don't have a lot of tide there. If you're working on the kills and you're trying to get into IMTT, it might be really tough because the tide is perpendicular to you and it roars. So there's a reason why things go a certain way at certain areas. I guess that's what I want to say. All right, and then we're getting a little long here, so we'll come to my last question here, and this is one that I keep getting surprised I keep getting asked because it's kind of popped up over and over throughout my channel. I'm even thinking that it might be a fun thing to put on a t-shirt for secret code for all of us out there. But you'll hear in the videos us talk on the radio, and you'll often see in the comments that I'll end what I'm saying by saying, I'll see you on the one. So a lot of people say, what does that mean? Well, See you on the one is a passing arrangement that tugboats or ships or anybody uses. It's short for saying, I will see you on one whistle. And a one whistle pass is another way of saying, I will see you port to port. So when I'm getting ready to meet another ship or another tugboat or something like that, and they call me on channel 13, and I might say, yeah, all right, I'll see you on the one. It's see you on the one whistle. So that's it. So I hope you guys like it. Thank you so much for your support. Like I say, this isn't a regular video. This is just a Friday extra. To get some light, because I wanted to shoot my backyard here, I've had to put a bunch of tinfoil here to reflect the light so that you can see me. And I hope it's working. All I know is that I think it is, because it's so damn hot. We're getting hot on the back side, hot on the front side. I used to, excuse the colloquialism, I'm sweating like a whore in church. It's the old sailor in me coming out. Anyway, cheers. Be safe out there, and I'll see you on the one.